The power of God is a creative, sustaining power. Resist not evil means to not give any credence to evil as a power in the first place. Once you embrace the idea of one power, you commune with that power and let go of the illusion that a power other than that of God created your problems. Divine love will meet every human need. Mary Baker Eddy is responsible for these words being printed on the wall of every Christian Science church. Divine love will meet every human need. How is it possible to believe this? People continue to have many unmet needs in the presence of divine love. They feel divine love and still their problems and sicknesses persist. This statement does not imply, as many who wish for the resolutions to their problems assume, that divine love is out there doing it for you or to you. Divine love is something that you must express, and when you do, your every problem or need will be met. You cannot have God and have fear as well. Generally speaking, most people are afraid to become that which they can envision in their most glorious and perfect moments. Fear of your highest possibility keeps you from knowing God and living a life in which you can access spiritual solutions. Essentially, there are two overriding emotions, love and fear. And those two emotional states cannot be experienced simultaneously. Replace fear by simply allowing a feeling of love or the presence of God to reside right in that same ghostly spot where the fear was. Don't feel spiritual, be it. You don't wander around all day feeling moral or honest. You simply are a moral person. If you consciously felt moral, you would be broadcasting it all day. Instead, you simply are honest and moral, and your behavior comes from within you. The same is true of your spirituality. Being spiritual is not an emotional accomplishment to praise yourself for. It is your way of being with God that is as natural as your health, morality, or even your artistic sense. Trying to feel spiritual is not the same as being it. By simply recognizing your connection to God and inviting that part of yourself to consciousness, you are raising your energy level to the level of spirit. But if you make yourself a pawn in a game of how mystical can I feel, you invite ego to begin to try to get more spiritual points than your opponents. It is that very elitist world of the lower vibrations that you want to leave behind. Don't try to feel spiritual. Just be it. God cannot be divided against God. God is an infinite power which cannot be fragmented or divided. That is, God cannot be available for some people and unavailable for others. God cannot be here one day and gone the next. He cannot be in anything that is evil and also be in that which is good. In defining God, all discussion disappears, and you have only the one, all-knowing, all-good, all-loving presence. When you find yourself in duality, you are in the physical world where you perceive yourself as laden with problems, and you seek solutions. Your ego insists the solution to being sick is to find health. The solution for scarcity is abundance, and the solution to pain is pleasure. It is not God that is divided into good versus bad, disease versus health. It is you. The absolute way to health, prosperity, and love is in knowing that disease, scarcity, or evil never can be acknowledged as having power. If you ask God to heal you, you are acknowledging that God made you sick. When you ask God for special favors, you acknowledge a God power that kept those favors from you. Instead of seeking benefits or favors from God, remind yourself to commune with this eternal presence that is in you. Bring this presence to the illusions that are in your mind called problems. Harmony is your normal, natural state of being. A mind imbued with ignorance or error will keep the body in a constant state of disrepair and problems. Harmony is your natural state of being, because when you are natural, you are in the hands of the one loving presence called God. It is your mind that creates problems for you. Your mind has the power to steer you through this lifetime and make it a marvelous voyage. When you reach spiritual peace, your mind and body are the instruments through which God energy flows. At this consciousness, there is no limit to what can be revealed to you. As you become more aware of your divinity, you will discover your abilities to remove illusions of illness, scarcity, and evil. This harmonious relationship with Spirit is your natural state of being. I never attempt to influence God, to ask for favors, or beg God to do something for me while I wait around and do nothing. Instead, I use prayer to open the gates of my soul to this divine presence.
So when you intellectually accept the 4 criteria below, your ability to undermine and undercut your old habituated patterns will have a solid base from which to proceed, and you'll graduate with honors from this completed course in Excuses Be Gone. So criterion number 1, it must make sense. Eliminating lifelong thinking habits cannot and will not happen if it doesn't strike you as a sensible thing to do. It doesn't really matter that everyone you know tells you how important it is to change. If it doesn't make sense to you, then you'll retreat to your old ways and continue to explain them away with your convenient laundry list of excuses. If the answer to, do I really want to bring about this change, is yes, then that's all you need in order to proceed and succeed. But if you have any doubts whatsoever, your old excuse-making will surface and you'll revert back to your long-held habits. This one basic thought, this makes sense to me, even if no one else understands me and I don't know how to make it happen, and that's what I'm going to stick with, will lead you to a new path to walk upon. Each step from this new position leads to another and then another until you finally have the freedom that comes from living without the hindrance of excuses. Second criteria is that it must be doable. Within you there is a private space where no visitors are allowed. This is where you meet yourself in total honesty, where you know what you're willing to dream and to desire and ultimately to do. It's also where you find your answer to the question, am I willing and able to do what it takes to overcome these long-held habits of thought and action? If the answer is that you just can't make a change, you know yourself well enough to predict that you won't do the work that's necessary to accomplish it. Then you're wise to heed that response. Forget about changing those old habits, at least for now. However, if you don't know how you'll do it, but you still feel that it's doable, then proceed. You'll find the answers coming to you because of your willingness to view these changes as a real possibility. I was asked to be in a full-length motion picture based on the teachings that I've been associated with throughout my professional career. Even though I was to play myself in a script that included professional actors, this endeavor would still require me to take direction from a well-established film director, learn lines, shoot scenes over and over and over from every conceivable angle, and work on a movie set for a month. It would entail 12-hour days, often staying up all night and working outdoors, and always being told what to do, where to sit, how to react, where to go next, what to wear, and on and on. These experiences were certainly foreign to all that I've done in the past 3+ decades, but it was doable for me. In that quiet, private place within me, I was thrilled at the idea of learning to become an actor in a movie based upon my teachings. Once I knew that this project had an inner go, I totally surrendered to the process. Criterion number 3. It must allow you to feel good. Your left brain deals with the details of your life. This is where you analyze, compute, figure, and get all of your ducks in a row. And the first 2 criterion detailed above speak right to it. When you ask yourself the question, can I create a rational reason to change? Your intellect responds, yes, indeed, that does make sense, and I really believe that I can do this thing and bring about the desired changes. Your right brain, on the other hand, deals with things like your emotions, your intuition, your enthusiasm, your awareness, and even your consciousness. If you want to shed old habits and excuses, take some time to visit that private place within you. Close your eyes and visualize yourself as being completely free of these limitations. How does your body react? If you feel good, that's all the evidence you need to prove to yourself that you have a rational reason to change. If you're hanging on to a whole bunch of habits that have been reinforced by excuses, note that these will make you feel bad. Your old mental crutches only serve to keep you from having an experience within your body that registers as good, so you may even be accustomed to being emotionally bankrupt. Pain, anxiety, fear, anger, and the like show up in your body as rashes, eczema, heart palpitations, arthritis, backaches, headaches, stomach aches, diarrhea, eye strain, cramps, and many more ailments too numerous to mention here. The point is that these emotional reactions that show up in the body can become your way of life, to the point that they define your reality. And when you're questioning why that is, that's when the excuse, I've always been this way, tends to rear its ugly head. You can feel better, you can feel healthy, you can feel strong, you can feel blessed, you can feel joy. In short, you can feel great. If the idea of eliminating an incapacitating thinking habit that you've had for a long time resonates with you, then imagine it being done. Does its disappearance register in your body as a positive, healthy, and happy sensation? If so, then that alone is reason enough to plunge into the excuses be gone formulations presented here. Criterion number 4. It must be aligned with the callings of your soul. How do you determine that you're aligned with your soul's purpose? You know by the way the rational reason speaks directly to you in that personal place within. The thoughts and feelings that surface tend to go like this: this is truly who I am. By making these changes and eradicating these excuses, I will be living my life on purpose, fulfilling a destiny I came here to accomplish.
You see, my evolution has brought me to the point of understanding that each human being on our planet must take total responsibility for his own inner development. And our inner development is something that we ignore a lot as we progress through this whole ladder of life. And I think of a metaphor. The metaphor is like a candle, and the candle flame that is burning inside of you, all right? Now this candle flame, if you take a candle and walk out of here this evening and you see raindrops falling, it'll blow out your candle, and the wind will blow out your candle. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen outside of you that you have absolutely no control over to blow out your candles. Your candles are getting blown out all the time. We have an inner candle flame that must never flicker, though the worst goes before us. And that's perhaps the highest place we can get to in our lives, is to understand that what our own inner development, symbolized by that candle flame, must never change, must never even flicker. It is our responsibility, not only for ourselves, but for our children as well, to raise them to believe that whatever is going on inside of you is entirely up to you. You own it. It is yours.
If you were raised on blame, it is a habit for you to reach for this excuse whenever you wish to explain why something is not working in your life. You can, for instance, blame lack of prosperity on a lot of externals: your culture, the stock market, politicians, your parents, lady luck, the greed of others. You can blame illness on heredity and the flu season and bad luck or the environment. Your sour relationships can be blamed on your partners, their inability to love you, your upbringing, or your parents. Your personality can be blamed on your parents, or your genes, or your childhood, or your siblings, or your birth order. And your physical appearance can be the fault of genetics, the food manufacturers, advertisers, or the polluted environment. This is potentially an endless list. The alternative to blame is self-responsibility, becoming an inner-directed person. You may not have been taught to consider taking responsibility for the events of your life. But if you are unwilling to discontinue the blame game, you will be unable to initiate your sacred quest. When you are inclined to think that someone else is responsible for your circumstances, take an instant to say a prayer of thanks for the lesson. The lesson is to become aware that you are the one who is experiencing the feeling. You can do this the instant that you recognize yourself playing the blame game. Feel thankful toward those you've let anger you. Give inner thanks for the reminder that the feeling you are experiencing is inside you, not outside you. Say to yourself, I do not want to be right. I want to know the truth. I want my higher self to rule. No one is to blame for how I am feeling. It is my feeling, and I respect that. These kinds of affirmations will lead you to self-reliance and to the way of the sacred quest. Your spiritual soul will then become the guiding light for the remainder of your time in the now here.
I'm going to give you another truth. Everything that is happening to you, whoever you are listening right at this moment, everything that's happening to you in your life, you have a voice in. You are creating. If you're not getting along with somebody on the job, if you're having difficulty in your relationships and feeling victimized, if your children don't respect you, look at yourself first and say, what is it about me? And what can I change in order to help myself not feel victimized? Not how can I get them to change? How can I make the world different? It's one of the fundamental problems, is that people want the world to be different than it is. The world is perfect. There's no anxiety in it. There's no depression in it. There's no stress in it. Contrary to anything you've heard, the world is not a stressful place. It's a perfect place. You are a part of that world. You are part of the universe. Your perfection is also in your own creation. You're not a mistake. None of it is. There's only anxious thinking. There's only stressful thinking. There's only angry thoughts. There's no anger in the world. When you stop having that and replace that with this serenity I'm talking about, with this peace inside of yourself, you don't even know how to be victimized anymore. It's not like you learn all these strategies. You become healing instead of becoming poisoned. You are effective rather than trying to get there. You live it. You see, when you get enough inner grace or inner peace or serenity, whatever you want to call it, and you feel really positive about yourself, it's almost impossible for you to be controlled and manipulated by anybody else. When you squeeze an orange, what comes out of an orange is what's inside. When you squeeze a person and put pressure on a person of any kind, and anger and hatred and stress and tension and depression come out, it isn't because of who is doing the squeezing or when they do it or how they choose to do it. It's because that's what's inside. And if you don't have it inside, it can never come out, no matter who you're living with. No matter how tough it may seem to you. And when somebody cuts you off on the freeway, and you're mad as hell and going to get even with them, you're going to get up in front of them and slow down and make them see what it's like, it isn't because they cut you off that you're so upset. It's because that's what you carry around inside. And I refuse to be victimized by my need to be right through using anger and being upset and so on. When you are able to visualize yourself doing something, you start acting on that visualization or that image. You're able to make things happen when you're looking for solutions that you can never make happen when you're more preoccupied with being a victim.
Where I would like to take you tonight, where I have been taken in my life, particularly in the last year or so, and particularly in the last decade or so, is to a place that I call extraordinary awareness. And extraordinary awareness is, it encompasses all of ordinary. So that you're listening to an ordinary man. I fill out the forms, or I get somebody to do it for me, more like it, and I pay my taxes, and I've provided for all of my children, and when I went to school and saw that they went to school and was there for them as much as I could be, and did all of the things that we would say constitute ordinary. But extraordinary doesn't stop here. See, this is where it stops for so many people. And they go through their life with this, remember the Barbra Streisand song? Is that all there is? And there's this sense that there's more. There's a calling. There's something in me that transcends the physical, that transcends ordinary. And this something that wants to move us to this extraordinary level out here is beyond the ego. Everything I've spoken about here is the ego. It's the striving for, it's an identification and a belief in my identity as a physical being, and believing in what my physical self tells me is my reality, and evaluating it on the basis of what I can see and touch and feel and smell and hear, so that it's my senses, my sensory self is here. But this up here, between ordinary and extraordinary, where I believe anyone can go at any time. Here we are what E. Cummings, another favorite poet, he said, to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you just like everybody else means to fight the greatest battle there is to fight and never stop fighting. This is how the poets think. It's about going beyond average. It's about going beyond ordinary. It's about recognizing your own divinity. It's about understanding that there's something inside of you that is calling you. It's your spirit. It's your soul. And your soul, your spirit, is here in the distance between here and here. And your soul wants something very, very different than your physical body ego apparatus wants. And my teacher, Abraham Maslow, used to always say to us, the number one marker of self-actualizing people is their independence of the good opinion of other people. They're just not interested in being told what to do. I watched on my iPad, which I just got, and it had a commencement address by Steve Jobs at Stanford University. It was a 15-minute, and I just sat there, and before I meditated, I listened to what he had to say. And his advice to the whole graduating class at Stanford was, don't live somebody else's dharma. Don't listen to that inner calling. And whatever it calls you to do, listen to it. And don't pay attention to anybody telling you what's possible or what's not possible, or whatever. Just fight for it. This idea that I'm going to listen to that voice, and we all have it. And when we have this voice, and this voice has passion associated with it, that is, when you feel a strong passion towards what it is that you want to become, what you want to create, the kind of person that you intend to be, when you have that within you, it doesn't make any difference whether anybody else understands it or gets along with it. You don't even try to talk to anybody else about it. You just listen to it, and you become a disturbing element. You become a scurvy elephant in the world. And it's the only way you'll ever feel fulfilled. Principles for changing your agreement with reality. And I want to just read you this from Hawkins' brand new book, The Eye of the Eye, E-Y-E of the Eye. And the first one of these is just simply the word attitude. And this is what he says about attitude. The way of spiritual advancement through consciousness is actually uncomplicated and simple. The primary quality is really one of attitude, in that one looks at life not as a place to acquire gain, but as an opportunity for learning which abounds even in the smallest of life's details. A spiritual attitude leads one to be friendly, kind, and well-meaning to all life. We find ourselves walking over an ant carefully rather than squashing it, not as a compulsive must or a religious rule, but out of a greater awareness of the value of all life. All animals will be discovered to actually be individuals who respond to respect and attention. Even plants are aware of it when you love and admire them. That's an attitude. That's the attitude I'm speaking about here. So the first word is attitude. The second is something that's a word that I like. It's called radical humility. Radical humility. That is, it is an easing up of the ego. Who I am is a piece of God. And as a piece of God, I am radically humble. That is, I have no need to make myself better than anybody else. I've often said that true nobility is not defined by being better than someone else. It's defined by being better than you used to be. The third is the ability to give love. The ability to give love. If you want to become a person who changes your mind and rewrites your agreement with reality, the ability to give it rather than to seek it. The fourth is an absence of judgment. To see if you can cultivate an attitude in your life in which you understand that when you judge another person, you do not define them. You define yourself as someone who needs to judge. That is just something that you define in yourself. That the absence of judgment, or the ability to suspend the judgment and rewrite your agreement from a non-judgmental way,
will teach you how to resolve problems almost instantaneously. Most of your problems in relationships come from your willingness, your unwillingness to let go of judgment. The next is giving up guilt. Guilt is nothing more than an attempt to manipulate the past and to make yourself feel less than whole because of anything that you might have done that you feel sorry about. Guilt, I've called in Your Erroneous Sounds 30 years ago, I called it a wasted emotion. Because feeling guilty about something can only take place in the present. Now, if you do something that you don't like and you'd like to make amends about it, by all means do so. And if you do something that is wrong or unfortunate, or that you feel some shame about whatever, by all means make amends, and by all means work at not doing it again. But feeling guilty does nothing more than mean to have you using up the present moment, being immobilized in the present over something that already has taken place. And again, the past is the past. The next is called willingness, and it's probably the most important key. Willingness means I open myself up to the potential or the possibility of being able to create a problem-free life. Willingness is that whole idea of the first principle. I have a mind that's open to everything and attached to nothing. The idea that I will say to myself, these are the conditions in my life that I dislike, and I am willing to create an intention to change them. Willingness. And the next is letting go of resistance. Letting go of any resistance that you might feel. Most of your resistance to creating a world or a life in which you no longer are attracting the same kind of problems you have is rooted in other people's conditioning processes that you have bought into. Whether it's the conditioning process of the groups that you're a part of, or the family that you're a part of, or the cultural experiences that you've been told are the only way that you can behave or look at a problem. Letting go of all of that. Just, there's no resistance. I open myself up through meditation to be free from resistance. No resistance. And when you do, as they say in Sanskrit, when the student is ready, when you're really ready, readiness and willingness are the same. When you're ready and willing, whatever teachers you need will be there. They'll show up and it works. It's just, it's a universal principle. The next is called compassion. And compassion on the scale of consciousness is one of the highest forces that you can have. Because the final one of these qualities here on creating a new agreement, if you will, is called connectedness. Connectedness. A sense that every single one of us has some connection through this invisible force that flows through all of us. Compassion and connectedness. Rumi's observation. I, you, me, he, she, they. These are distinctions which do not exist in the garden of the mystics. A Persian poet from back in the ancient times in the 13th century, his name was Jalaluddin Rumi. And Rumi has this observation that's been very important and very powerful to me. He said, "The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep." Let me say it again. The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. I'd like to take a poll. Just by a show of hands, I'd like to ask how many people in this room, and there's about 3,000 of us here tonight, I'd like to ask you, how many of you awaken at one time or another between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m.? Let me just see by a show of hands. And if you look around, you see that this is a universal experience. Now, what do you think that is? If everybody, almost everybody, awakens at some time between 3 and 4. Now, for some of us, we just interpret that as, all right, this is my age. I'll just run into the bathroom and I'll be right back. And you may make that visit several times a night. I don't know. But there's more to that. And I'd like you to now, of all of those people who raised their hand at this idea that you awaken sometime between 3 and 4 a.m., how many of you awaken at exactly the same time? Exactly the same time, with a little digital clock next to you. What is your time? 3:18. What is your time? 2:20. What is yours? 4:50. So like there's and this happens repeatedly, over and over again. My time is 3:13. I awaken at 3:13 night after night after night. I look over, I've got this little clock. It's not an alarm clock, it's just a little digital clock. I just look over and it's 3:13 again and again and again. So what I had trained myself to do in the writing of this book, in the inspiration book, is to put my feet on the floor and say to myself, all right, you are going to awaken because here's what Rumi said, the morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Do you realize that between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the night, this is the time when you're closest to your source? This is the time when it's the quietest. It is the time when it's the most peaceful, when there are the least distractions. And of course in Miracles it says the memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there is conflict. A mind at war with itself remembers not eternal gentleness. Eternal gentleness. That's what you came from. It beckons you back to be awake. It's the most creative time in your life. Try it. Take that moment that you are being called by your source and awaken, and force yourself to shake the cobwebs out. And if you can't, then put your feet on the floor and say, look, if I have to go back to sleep, I'm going to sleep with my feet on the floor. And after a while, that gets very uncomfortable, and you'll get yourself up. Now, when I do that, and I get up, that is the most glorious time to be out there. And I go out onto the lanai, and I get this sense of this powerful feeling of inspiration. It's overwhelming to me. And I walk by my writing table, and it pulls me. It's pulling me towards it. It's almost beckoning me and saying, please, please come to me. I want you to, and I sit there sometimes, and I literally wonder, where is this coming from? The words, they just flow, and I sit there, and I write by hand, and as I'm writing and allowing this to flow through my heart and onto the pages, I just think to myself, I wonder what's going to come next. I wonder when it's going to come next. It's almost as if God is saying, this is why you're here. And I can't get you any other time because it's just so busy, and there's horns bonk, and there's so many distractions. But here's a time when you can just be with me. Just be in spirit. Just be inspired. Inspirado. Be in this space with me. And I will then allow what creative juices that you have forgotten about because you edged me out for so much a part of your life. And here it is. And you'll find yourself getting the right ideas. Examining things that you never thought of before. Writing, some of you, I know you do it in your sleep many times. You'll write a poem and it'll be so phenomenal. And then you'll say, well, I'll remember that tomorrow. And then you get up and you can't get any of it. The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Use those hours. And forget about the idea that, let's see now, I went to bed at 11. And if I get up at 3, that means 4 hours, so I'm going to be 4 hours deficient all day long. I'm not going to be... Forget that. You've got an eternity to sleep. An eternity to sleep. And when you learn to meditate and get quiet and get peaceful, you can always, in 20 minutes time of meditation, any time during the day, get the equivalent of a full night's sleep. Don't go back to sleep. there is a place and a possibility that miraculous things can happen, but you have to, in order to banish the doubt, in order to heal this energy body that I'm speaking about here, in order to be, you have to be in such a position that you're not asking. You're not coming from a ordinary place asking someone extraordinary to do something for you. That's sort of what we've learned in our religious model, that God is outside of us, something like a cosmic bellboy, that if we just sort of ask it to do something for us and we behave and we pay a certain amount of money and we go to the right temples and we do the right things, that this external being will then provide us with favors, and that this God has the ability to heal, but it withholds it depending upon what mood it's in and so on. And that's a very different concept that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a concept of God that says that we are all pieces of God. Like T.S. Eliot said, we shall not cease from exploring. And at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time, to know it. You don't have to die to do this. You can know it here. You can know it now. You can say to yourself, as the I Am discourses say over and over and over again, the I Am is the divine work of God. And you are capable of saying I am. And you don't want to add anything after I am that isn't consistent or harmonious or in rapport with God. That is the all-creating knowing, the all-knowingness. We all know everything. There's a higher self within each and every one of us. There's a highest self which is omniscient and omnipotent, all-powerful, and everywhere at once. And the Creator, according to Mikhail Ivanov, a great teacher of the White Brotherhood, that is white light, not white skin, okay? I could get nervous when I say that. But it's and this teaching of the initiatic sciences, which I've been studying for the last couple of years in depth, reading and studying and meditating on a regular basis, that God places within each and every one of us a spark of Himself. Most organized religion has taught that we know and we're the conduit, we're the ones that can give you access to God. You have to do it through us, through our organization, through all of the kinds of teachings that we have. And I'm suggesting that you don't need that at all. So it's an awareness that there's something, something so powerful that we're capable of, and that there is a highest self within each and every one of us. And this highest self is, religion doesn't teach it. Religion has not taught that because it's been so much about power. So, when we're talking about the conflicts that are going on here in the Balkans, where we are right now, off to Medjugorje tomorrow, so much of it is about religion. So much of it is about, Christians and Muslims and fighting and all of this kind of thing over these ideas. And I'm suggesting to you that Jesus was saying, you are God's. And you have to be able to say, I am. And anything that you want to place your attention on, if you want to overcome an addiction, if you want to lose the weight that you've had for as long, if you've been overweight for most of your life, if you want to attract prosperity and wellness into your life, if these are something that you really want for yourself, truly, if you want it for yourself, you have to declare it. And it's not about asking. It's about commanding.
Here's what Einstein said about that. He said, your imagination is more important than knowledge.
For knowledge is limited to all that we know and understand, while your imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. It's like the power of our imagination is unlimited, and I've often given the example of that you cannot create something for yourself in your life if you don't have an expectation for it. And your expectation for what it is that you'd like to create for yourself in your life is strictly, in your imagination. And if you're living in a place where you are experiencing something like poverty, and you see around you all the reasons why that this is taking place, and you're constantly thinking about, that the economy is down, or I didn't get the breaks, or the money has just run out, and I'm not going to be able to replace it. You've got to be able to keep, understand what Rilke is saying there, that. They'll be lost to you because they're banished by your failure to imagine them. And this power of your imagination, what you place into your imagination, is probably the most important quality that you can have. The power of your imagination affects how it is that you relate to the world, and what it is that you allow into your world, and what it is that you expel from your world before it even gets there.
You have within you a great gift. It's the most powerful gift you've ever been given. It's the gift of your imagination. And in your imagination, in your thoughts, nothing else, go to the place within you where you begin to perceive and see what it is that you would like to be, whether it's the right weight you would like to be, or addiction-free, or to have the job that you want, or to be in the kind of relationship that you would like to have. Just in your imagination and no place else, just go there and create for yourself, and you can't come up with an excuse for it because you're just doing this in your mind. So that's the first thing you do. And then, when you get this firmly entrenched in your mind, you then go to the feeling that accompanies that thought. You're not thinking about what you would like to have, you're thinking from the end. You're thinking there. In your imagination only, you are there. And now, how does that feel? What do you feel? I was at the mall just recently with Sky and Serena, two of my daughters. And this young man walked up to me, 39 years old. And he had a major speech impediment. He was a stutterer. He could barely get words out. But he recognized me, he saw me, and it took all of his courage to come up to me. His name was Vincent. And finally he couldn't get the words out and so on. And I said, well, what would you like? He started immediately talking about his speech impediment. And I said, how would you, in your imagination, what I'd like you to do right here, right now, is I'd like you to see yourself as free of that speech impediment. Just free of it. It's gone. It's completely gone. He said, okay, I can do that. And I said, now, how does it feel? He said, it feels great. See, the thought is what you create in your imagination, but the feeling is where you experience it, in the body. I feel great. I said, what I want you to do is every single time you think about that speech impediment, I want you to go to that feeling. I feel great. Every time you think about losing the weight, I want you to go to the place in your imagination in which you are what it is that you want to weigh, looking the way you want to look. Every time you have a thought about you don't have enough money, I want you to go to the place in your imagination where you are free of that fear of not having enough prosperity or abundance. Just go to that place and then ask yourself, how does it feel? It feels joyful. It feels content.